Thanks, Derek, and good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here today. I was at this conference last year, and I was in my little work-from-home cave. I was fully dressed. I didn't have my pajamas on, but I did have my nice heated blanket in November, so that kind of kept me nice and warm. Anyway, it's fantastic to be here today, not just to meet everyone in person, but to see all the lovely shiny merchandise, the fantastic EVs and wall chargers, and all of the infrastructural stuff all of the physical stuff that we're about in zero-emission vehicles. So, who am I and why am I here? And why did zero-emission vehicles get set up? We are an office in the Department of Transport in Ireland, and we launched in July of this year, and I know a number of you will have been at that event. So what we're about clean transport for all. So our mission is to support the uptake of zero-emission vehicles and to coordinate the provision of charging infrastructure to meet the range of needs for both people and businesses in Ireland. So we are and I guess the question is, well, why is government in this space? Why is government getting involved in the types of cars people drive? I think the transition to electric vehicles was probably going to happen anyway, but we have really significant climate change targets where we want to reduce 51% of emissions from transport by 2030. And the transition to electric vehicles, we think, will provide about 2/5 of that overall emissions reduction. So for us in government, what we want to do is support and accelerate and step up what I think would be a natural transition to EVs in any case, but we kind of want to give it an extra push. So we're a new office in the Department of Transport. We draw on a number of resources and skills and expertise from different agencies. So our partner agencies are the SEAI, who've been active in this space for a decade already. We're working very closely with our colleagues in TII, with the NTA, and with our colleagues in ESBN. So it's very much, we're based in the Department of Transport, but it's very much bringing in the expertise and the experience from this range of agencies and people working on the kind of the EV system. What we're about then is coordinating, collaborating, and driving this change from behind. Sorry, is there an echo? It's okay. So what we have to deliver, and really what our 3-year plan is about. Sorry, I'm just getting a bit of feedback, so I'll just step back a moment. We have our target by 2030 that people are referring to, which is our nearly 1 million EVs on Irish roads. What I would say is it's not 1 million. Don't judge me by 1 million. It's 945,000. So that's going to be my get out clause. But by 2025, our interim target is to have 175,000 EVs on Irish roads. There's 2 key delivery mechanisms by which we're going to have these on the roads. One is incentivising vehicle uptake through finance and taxation. There's a number of different grants available. And then the second one, and the one that really is, I think, where we need to step in and start delivering more quickly, is to develop the national EV charging infrastructure network. As well as these 2 key pillars, we have a range of activities across communications, across strategy, across policy, all supporting these 2 objectives. So what we do then, as I said, we're really the one-stop shop across a number of agencies, developing the government strategy and policy on EVs, feeding into our climate action plan and emissions reduction targets, coordinating the funding and support for charging infrastructure delivery, providing the capital grants that exist for the purchase of EVs, and engaging not just with the public and the wider public sector, but significantly the private sector, the people who have been delivering and pushing out EVs and EV infrastructure already. We're very conscious that government is coming in, not trying to take over or inhabit a space where the commercial market is already operating very well, but just trying to encourage and support and remove blockages where we can. So what we're about then in delivering the transformative change that we need to see. We have challenges at the moment. I don't need to tell you about them. I'm sure you're already completely aware. Supply chains are slowing down. The cost of delivering infrastructure is increasing. So, the cost of construction, basic things like that. So what we want to deliver is becoming more costly, both in terms of the vehicles themselves because of the supply chain shortages, but also in terms of delivering the infrastructure. And all of this, of course, is happening in the middle of a cost of living crisis. So where we're trying to get people to switch to EVs, they suddenly have less money to make that investment, perhaps. So our solutions really are about engaging and collaborating with the general public, but with the private sector as well to find the solutions. And really what we're about here is innovating, thinking outside the box, thinking of different ways of doing things. Sometimes it's not necessarily a huge infrastructure plan, which I'll come to, but sometimes it's a little tweak here or there that can just make a system move more quickly. And we're trying to work with the private sector to almost crowdsource those solutions, to identify where the roadblocks are coming in and to hopefully overcome those. So in terms of our vehicle supports, we have a very well-established private passenger car grant. We have the alternative fuel AFDHV grant, which is managed by TII, which funds the transition to zero-emission vehicles for coaches, for heavy goods vehicles. We have our e-taxi grant, which is managed by the NTA. And then also this year we launched a really successful initiative to date, which I think was booked out almost on day 3, which is our commercial fleet trials, which is run by our partners in the SCAI. And that's giving private sector fleets and public sector fleets a chance to kind of pilot the use of EVs in their fleets to see how it works for them. And then we're pretty sure that it will work really well, and that then gives them the confidence to make that investment. And then there's also a range of taxation supports. I think it's fair to say that as the EV market matures and as EVs move from being a minority of market share, closer to halfway point, we will start to phase out these grants, rebalancing our investment from vehicles to infrastructure. And then moving on to the infrastructure strategy, we published a draft strategy in February this year. It got a really, really high level of both public and stakeholder engagement. So we had 14,000 online surveys completed in response to it, and we'd over 100 very detailed written responses. The responses were across several broad thematic areas. Really, do more quickly. Promoting affordability, the just transition to electric vehicles is going to be really, really key. And then the biggest challenge, I guess, is managing the energy demand and the grid capacity and getting that engagement and working relationship between the transport demand side and the energy provision side right. We have a significant ambition. We will be publishing our revised and final strategy by the end of this year, alongside what will be a challenging implementation plan. And the ambition, I guess, just isn't just coming from us in ZEVI, it's coming from the public who are telling us, you know, you need to get the chargers out there. People are getting not just range anxiety, but now charger anxiety. But also, for example, there's work ongoing in the EU, and I know this will be discussed later on, but we're shortly to agree across Europe what's called the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Regulation, which will set really, really high ambition and challenging requirements. It'll be mandatory for us to deliver in Ireland by 2025 across the range of infrastructure. So what will our network look like? I think it's fair to say that home charging will be the bedrock of our EV charging network in Ireland. One of the benefits for Ireland with EVs is that we're a small country. It's very, very difficult to drive more than 400 kilometres on a single day in Ireland. You can do it, but they're rare enough. And given the range and the ability of the new vehicles coming on the market, a home charger and an EV that's ready to go in the morning will satisfy most people's driving requirements for that day. However, we also know that there are people, I'm one of them, I live in a nice house, but I live in a nice house near a city centre and it's terraced and I have no off-street parking. So we need residential charging solutions for people who don't have the option for home charging. And we'll be working with local authorities to roll those out over the coming years. And then the kind of the top-up charging will be both destination charging, which will be at trip generators. We're seeing this already. You know, this isn't new. Both public and private sector are rolling these out already across the country. But we will come in and we will provide more support and more funding for this, and we're anticipating launching a first destination charging scheme to support the installation of EV charging in sports clubs across Ireland, both north and south, later this year. And then lastly, it's the en route charging. So this will be our high-powered charging on the motorway network. This is the top up and go, the pull in, 5 to 10 minute charge, get your next 100 kilometres on your car and off you go. And while in a way, it's maybe going to be the smallest part of the network, but because of the energy demand required, it's probably the hardest to deliver because of the planning and the grid capacity that's needed to deliver that high-powered charging network. So how are we going to do all this? Well, I should say, and I've said it already, this isn't something where government is necessarily leading. You know, there's a very well functioning private sector market inhabiting this space. So what we want to do is to work with partners in the private sector to collaborate, to coordinate, to plan, to identify the blockages and to solve those. Really what we're interested in, and I guess the reason for government interaction, as I've said, is acceleration and pushing things maybe faster and quicker through government supports, but also ensuring that there's a just transition here, so that where there are maybe remote communities where an EV charging infrastructure isn't commercially viable, maybe government will step in there and support that. Looking to the residential charging in built-up urban neighbourhoods, again, maybe not commercially viable if we're talking about slow charging speeds, so that's something where government can come in and support to ensure that we get an equitable access to electric vehicles for all. How we're doing that then, we launched in the last month 4 stakeholder groups, one focused on public sector energy, one on public sector delivery, which is our partners in local authorities and other public sector organisations, and then we've a couple of public-private groups, one on infrastructure and one on vehicles. They were really, really successful, and I found them successful. I'll let other people make the verdict as well. I thought they were great. And we got an awful lot of feedback and engagement and stimulating points raised. So we're going to continue those and work, as I said, collaboratively with our partners in both public and private sector to achieve what we need to. So where do we think we'll be by 2025? So this is the 3-year plan. So at now, I think we're at about 22% of cars in Ireland this year were sold with a plug. About 15% of those are pure battery electric. The others are PHEV as well. So by 2025, looking at that, hopefully, I'm always optimistic, but I would imagine that we'll see about 40% of the fleet in 2025 being sold with a plug. And crucially for us, once we get to those numbers, we will be able to start developing that second-hand vehicle market, because really it's a numbers issue at the moment. We just don't have enough cars in the fleet to have a well-functioning, easily accessible second-hand market. And the importing challenges, you know, I'm sure Dan from the UK will tell us all of their vehicles are already, so we have issues about Brexit and import, but you know, the UK second-hand vehicles are already spoken for by the UK second-hand market. So it's very difficult to get them in. I would expect by that stage then that we will see the transition of the grants away from the smaller vehicles to supporting the freight, the high mileage, the higher emitting fleets, and that's probably where our focus on vehicle grants will be. By 2025 then, we also expect to have what we're calling stage 1 of the national charging network delivered, and that will be led not just by our infrastructure strategy, but as I mentioned earlier, by the EU requirements in AFIR, which will be really challenging for us to meet, but you know, a challenge is there to be overcome. So we'll expect to see that rolled out. And then all of this, I think, through the combination of the natural uptake that's happening in the market, the grant supports and the infrastructure rollout, we should see 175,000 vehicles on the road that are electric. And that's stage 1. After that, that'll be the end of our 3-year plan. After that, it's moving out to 2030 and what we achieve after that. But I'm very much a day-by-day person, so I have enough challenges not to be thinking beyond 2025 at the moment. But I'm pretty, I wouldn't say comfortable, but confident that we will be able to achieve those targets. So look, that's all from me. I'm back for a panel session later on. If anyone has any questions or wants to grab me in one of the breaks, very happy to talk. But thank you for your time and good luck, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.